Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police, we're kind of spending the year highlighting our committees and our committee chairs. So each month we're going to spotlight at least two committees, and you are one of the committees that we are looking at is the legal committee, which you are the chairperson of. So just introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Don Zoufal, and I am the chair of the legal committee.
Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Oh, well, I've been a participating member from with the Illinois Chiefs for about 20 27 years, 28 years. And I think I've been the chair of the legal committee since 1997. So that's how many years now? That's 17. I guess this is my 26th year as the chair of the committee. My background, when I first came to the Illinois Chiefs, I was the general counsel for the Chicago Police Department. So I held that job. I'm an attorney by trade. So and I've never been a sworn police officer, but I worked for CPD as a general counsel. I also worked for the state's corrections department as the chief legal counsel there. So I've got some experience in a couple of different areas of the law. I've spent a lot of time when I was actively practicing as an attorney. I was also the chief assistant corporation counsel for the city of Chicago. So I represented the city in a lot of the custom policy and practice cases that were brought pursuant to 42 USC section 1983. So I've got some familiarity, some particular familiarity with civil litigation in the context of the federal claims that are brought against police officers. I sort of left the active practice of law, the full-time practice of law, in about 2003 when I became the deputy commissioner for safety and security for Chicago's Department of Aviation. So I managed the security operations for O'Hare and Midway airports for about 3 or 4 years, and then I finished my career with the city as the first deputy for the city's Office of Emergency Management Communications. So I've had some experience both on the operational side and on the legal, kind of on the legal and policy side, even at the executive level of the Chicago Police Department and the state's corrections department. So I think I've got some kind of broad experience there. And I guess the only other thing I would say is that after I left government service in 2007, I've been doing consulting work primarily along the lines of technology for security related concerns in the airport space, but also in the law enforcement space. So that's a particular area, I think, an expertise I've developed over about the past 15 years or so, working with new technologies. Some of the stuff I'm kind of playing around with now are things like AI and facial recognition, which is kind of a subset of AI, and sort of information systems to help police better understand the operational environment and look at things like predictive policing and those sorts of things. So that's kind of my active practice. I'm also retired from the Army Reserves. I retired as a colonel in 2009. So I'm enjoying my my military pension, such as it is. But that's a little bit about myself and the things that I've been doing. And as I said, been the chair of the committee since 1990, I think 1997.
What drew you to the legal world?
Well, I mean, I left, when I left law school. At first, I went to work for a couple of large law firms. I didn't really care for that area of practice. I always wanted to do civil rights defense work for government, for law enforcement officers. So that was always my area, my passion, kind of within the legal sphere. And I spent, several years as a trial lawyer, defending police officers, defending the city of Chicago. Ultimately, I think I wanted to get more experience in terms of operational issues and to be involved as an operator, not just as an attorney. So there were days when I was doing attorney work where I longed to be like a general counsel and be more involved in sort of the policy issues and the broader applications of law to an organization. And then when I was in those jobs, I longed to be a trial lawyer. So, but I don't think I long to be a trial lawyer so much anymore. I do like kind of settling on working with the policy, and that's the opportunity that my participation in the Chiefs gives me. While that's not my day-to-day work or my day-to-day practice, I really think of my work with the Chiefs as kind of my contribution to the law and my ability to kind of keep in touch with those legal issues.
What are some of the committee's goals when it comes to being the legal committee and being involved with the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police?
Well, we're kind of a specialty committee, really, in a way. I try to actively participate with the legislative committee, and there are a few other lawyers that participate in that committee. A lot of the real assigned goals of the committee from the organization has been around the issue of filing amicus briefs and making statements sort of on behalf of the organization in terms of issues of legal policy. Those don't happen all the time, so we're not constantly writing briefs, but we have weighed in on issues, a range of issues, in front of a lot of different courts. We've done amicus briefs to the U.S. Supreme Court, amicus briefs to the Illinois Supreme Court, some amicus briefs in various Illinois courts of appeal, and we even just recently did an amicus brief that we filed at the district court level. So whenever we receive requests for amicus, or whenever one of the members of the organization has an interest in advancing in a position in some piece of litigation, we'll look at that at the request of the board and make a determination about whether or not an amicus can be filed. And then what I do is there are sort of a loose group of attorneys that frequently provide service. You see them a lot at the legal updates annually, because that's one of the functions that we do, is kind of do that training, the legal update training. So those attorneys, that kind of group of the loose group of folks, will contact them and see if we can get somebody to help write the amicus brief. I've written a few. I've assisted on a few where we've also had other attorneys that have worked to provide the support in the amicus briefs. So that's a little bit about that function. So as I said, the first one of the other functions that we do is providing advice and counsel, kind of on the legislative front. That over the past few years, that's taken a particularly great amount of time, particularly with a lot of the reform related issues and a lot of the reform movements that we see. So between the advocacy in conjunction with legislation, the filing of amicus briefs on behalf of the organization, and the annual training we do with the legal update. That's sort of the functions that we perform.
What kind of challenges have you faced as the legal committee?
Well, sometimes, as I said, given the nature of the committee, which is mostly lawyers, we don't really have much representation that comes directly from the organization. We've had a couple of chiefs that have been attorneys, or at least, well, I mean, there may be more, but a lot of them don't want to admit it, which is understandable. But we've had some chiefs that have been attorneys that have participated. George Wagner and Russ Lane names immediately come to mind, and we're certainly always welcoming any chief who wants to participate in it. But a lot of the matters that we focus on tend to be kind of technical, legal issues that require people to have sort of that legal training. So that's so sometimes finding attorneys to help support us can be a little bit challenging. But as I said, I think we've kind of got a loose group of folks that generally we can call on and get assistance from pretty much any time. So and at the end of the day, we've never been able to not fill the legal update training issues or have people to help us with amicus briefs.
What training would you say is key for officers to know when it comes to respecting and knowing about the legal aspects of the job?
Well, there are programs out there, that actually provide that training for the Illinois chiefs. Different organizations, two that come immediately to mind. One that's really a program that works in conjunction with the chiefs organization, and that's Court Smart. That's a very good program, kind of going over, updating and refreshing the law so that officers can have access to that. And and I think they just actually had an article about Court Smart in the most recent edition of the Command magazine. Lexipol is another service out there that provides training. I know that there's a company that I've been doing some work with that's looking to try to provide some de-escalation training for police officers. I think it's important for officers to understand where the law is and what the law is. So those trainings are important. I also think it's important to understand those areas that may not be currently the subject of legal requirements, but may soon become the subject of legal requirements. Now we have requirements for in-service training. Officers need to be mindful about that. De-escalation training, use of force training. There are lots of new requirements that have come online as a result of the Safety Act, and unfortunately, those requirements came online without any kind of real attention paid to resourcing them. So I know that that's a challenge for lots of departments, particularly for the smaller departments, but even larger departments. The amount of training and making sure that you can run everyone through these in-service training cycles is going to be a challenge for departments around the state. And so understanding what those training requirements are, and then finding appropriate training through the MTUs or training that's been certified by the training board, so that you can meet those statutory requirements, I think is going to become increasingly important, because the minute something goes wrong, the lawyers are going to ask to see the training records of the individuals. And if the training records aren't up to date, even if the training may not really have a whole lot to do with the underlying problem, you can rest assured that some creative lawyer will figure out that it really does, or at least argue that it does. So training is becoming, I think, increasingly important. And And I think that the Chiefs organization is looking to try to step up and involve itself in the training, and I think that's a good thing. I think that's it's a good thing for our organization, both in terms of the services that it can provide to the membership, but also I think it offers an opportunity for the organization to kind of get into the training business, if you will, and look at that as a potential source of revenue, good source of revenue for the organization. So it's kind of a win-win, I think.
What kind of challenges do you see police departments facing right now? Like, what's the biggest challenge for police departments right now, in your opinion?
Well, I think clearly one of the real challenges is staffing and recruitment. That's clearly a problem. It tends to be an even greater problem for the smaller agencies because of their of limited resources, and we've looked at this issue of these just in terms of even the recruitment practices. If you're able to recruit someone and send them through the academy, they'll come back to your organization for a couple of years, and then suddenly they'll be recruited to some other organization that can pay them a little more money and better benefits. And obviously young police officers are looking for those sorts of things, and so even keeping individuals at organizations has become challenging. So I think that that recruitment and retention are significant issues, and then hand in hand with that comes training, because as you have more turnover, as you have more challenges with retaining people, the training becomes more important, more critical, and the requirements that are being placed on officers and accountability measures that are being placed on officers are increasing. So making sure that people are appropriately trained and they can do their job is I think are key measures to ensure accountability. Before you want to make somebody accountable, you need to make sure that they understand what the requirements are, and that they're trained in those requirements, and then they have the skills and abilities to implement them. And I think that's the real challenge, particularly a challenge that's created by legislation like the Safety Act, again, that for all the good reasons, creates higher standards and creates accountability measures and outlines training requirements. The problem again is that it comes without a funding to support the mandate, and that's going to be challenging for a lot of departments.
Along the lines of the Safety Act and that, what about the assault weapons ban? Do you see a lot more legal issues like cropping up from that, not just the current ones, but you think it's going to continue, and for how long?
Well, I think that the assault weapons ban will remain an issue of contention and litigation for the foreseeable future. I would imagine for a year or two, it will take to wind its way through the courts to determine what portions of the act are unconstitutional, what portions of the act can be implemented. I think one of the challenges again that law enforcement is confronted with is we have legislators that have a firm grasp on what they think are really good ideas, and philosophically they may be correct, but the problem is that the devil is always in the details, and unfortunately I don't see the legislature as paying the kind of attention to those details that is necessary to make their enactments ones that can actually be enforced, or in some cases, whether or not they're even constitutional or permissible under the law. And I don't see kind of the attention or the focus of that in the passage of these kinds of pieces of legislation. And again, we see the continuing problem with our state legislature where I don't think the positions of organizations that are going to be responsible for enforcing these acts or implementing them are really taken to account in the legislative process. And so as a result, the legislation comes out, and there are all sorts of there's a whole host of unintended consequences that the legislature didn't anticipate because they essentially didn't do their homework on the front end and accept the comments from organizations like the IACP, the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police, and other organizations. The Safety Act is a testament to that, because we're looking to the fourth trailer bill to fix problems in a piece of legislation, because it clearly was not what anyone intended, but in the legal business, words have meaning and words have power, and if you aren't careful with the words you use, you end up with results you're looking for.
Any tips or words of wisdom for police?
Well, yeah, always listen to your lawyer. No, one of my, I guess over my 26 years with the organization, one of the things that I've always stressed is that chiefs and municipal law enforcement organizations need to become more comfortable with the fact that the corp counsel or their municipal counsel or your municipal attorney is really the main legal advisor for your organization. I know that there's oftentimes a relationship with state's attorneys, and I know that state's attorneys are their own separate political office, and certainly with regard to criminal prosecutions, you need to have a relationship with them and an understanding about what they're going to prosecute and what they're not going to prosecute and how they want their cases served up to them. But at the end of the day, the legal advisor for your organization, for your police department, is your municipal counsel. If things go wrong or things go haywire, or if the lawsuit comes, it will not be the state's attorney who will be defending you. It will be the municipal attorney. And if there's liability for your organization, if there's liability, that liability is not going to go to the county. It's going to go to your municipality. So that relationship with the municipal attorney, I think, is important. And oftentimes, I don't think that that chiefs are as comfortable exercising that relationship as I think that they should be. So I guess that's one piece of advice that I have. The other is that ultimately the lawyer is an advisor for you, just like other advisors, and very infrequently will a lawyer tell you you can't do that because it's illegal. They have advice about how to reduce risk, legal risk for your actions. But at the end of the day, there are other things that you have to consider beyond, potential liability issues. There are issues of, public confidence and those sorts of things. So I think that's important I think it's important to have a good relationship with the attorneys and to listen to what they have to say. But I think sometimes lawyers can be a little overbearing. And their word is not the law. Their word is simply their opinion about the law.
Definitely some good advice. I wanted to circle back on one thing before we sign off, but you were talking about you were looking into legal issues when it comes to AI, and I thought that was extremely interesting. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Well, so there, well, facial recognition, for example, is one sort of piece of artificial intelligence, and as we develop enhanced computing technology, and as we're able to process more and more information, um, artificial intelligence can provide insights view data in a way to provide you with information that you ultimately would not necessarily be able to get or understand without that kind of assistance, or without using those tools. The important part of AI, I think, and facial recognition, for example, is an example of it. While it can be a useful tool and it can help you narrow a pool of suspects in terms of an investigation that you might be conducting, it isn't a substitute for human judgment. It isn't a substitute for a decision made by individuals, and it's not something that's infallible. So, for example, if you're going to use facial recognition in conjunction with conducting investigations, it's not going to establish probable cause for you. It's not going to be the basis for you to get a warrant. It's a tool along with other tools that you can utilize to help, as I said, narrow the field and winnow things down, and help aid your investigation, but it's not a substitute for an investigation. And I think that's the big concern that people have about AI. There's a misunderstanding that somehow this will be a substitute for human judgment. And it won't, it's not. But it's something I think that can aid humans in making better judgments and making them faster and more efficiently.
All right. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think that's, as I said, we're always welcome. Chiefs are always welcome to try to participate in the things that we do. As I said, I think we work fairly closely with the board and with the board of officers and with the exec board in terms of making making decisions and making judgments on matters. We're kind of a service organization to the rest of the committees and the rest of the activities of the chiefs, and happy to provide that service.